It is 12:01, so I think I'm going to go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. I am Cindy Sherrick, Director of Gift Planning at the Seattle Foundation, and I'm pleased to be joined today with my colleague, Ingrid Chapman, who's the Senior Gift Planner. I want to thank you all for joining us today for the Embarking on Values-Based Estate Planning webinar. And I want to begin by recognizing that the Seattle Foundation exists on land that is the traditional home of the Coast Salish people. We acknowledge them as the original and current stewards of the region.
Hi, I'm Ingrid. I'm going to run through a few housekeeping items for today. Everyone is muted and cameras are off to limit noise and disruptions. We are recording today's presentation and we'll send a link of the recording as well as supplemental materials after we wrap up. At the end of the program, time for Q&A, which I will moderate. Please use the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen, or it might be at the top if you are using an iPhone or an iPad. We'll get to as many questions as possible during our time together. This event has a live transcript and closed captioning. If you would like to turn this feature off or change the size of the closed captioning, you can do so by clicking live transcript at the bottom of the Zoom window. Finally, when you sign off today, you'll be prompted to take a quick survey about your experience. Please take a few minutes to complete this. It is so important to how we shape future events. We want to ensure that they are meaningful and helpful to our audience. And to sweeten the deal, everyone who completes the survey will be entered in a drawing to win a prize.
Many of you know that Seattle Foundation's mission is to ignite powerful, rewarding philanthropy and make Seattle a stronger, more vibrant community for all. Our important social impact programs are focused on racial equity and are making a big difference in our community. And since this is an estate planning seminar, it is worth noting that some of the most generous and transformational gifts to our organization have come in the form of charitable bequests.
I'm honored to introduce our speakers, Scott Clays and Jean Gusev. Scott currently serves as the Senior Director of Gift Planning for the Salvation Army's Northwest Division. He has over 25 years of fundraising experience, primarily in charitable estate planning. He has helped hundreds of individuals and families with different values and goals plan their estate. He held similar gift planning roles for Cascade Public Media and the Multi-Care Health System. He is a volunteer board member of Leave10. And Jean currently serves as a senior wealth strategist at Northern Trust. Jean has a deep background in trust administration, estate planning, wealth management, and wealth transfer strategies for high net worth individuals, families, business executives, and organizations. She is frequently sought out for her expertise on a wide variety of estate, philanthropic, and wealth planning matters. Jean and Scott, I'm so pleased that you're here with us to lend your expertise. I'll turn it over to the both of you to present.
Great, thank you so much, Ingrid. Scott and I are so pleased to be here with all of you today. We are excited to present this topic of embarking on values-based estate planning and starting philanthropic conversations. And we understand that we have a variety of folks in the audience today. And so this presentation is presented by Leave10, and it's really looking to help elevate philanthropy in the Puget Sound region. This organization came together over a decade ago with a number of professionals in the field, both working on the philanthropic side and on the for-profit side, focusing on education for individuals and advisors, as well as the philanthropic entities that are within our community, hoping to raise all boats in increasing philanthropy in our region. So this presentation is looking to provide the case and some initial tools for values-based planning. And since we have some limited time, we're including a number of books, articles, and resources in the handouts to help you continue to explore this approach on your own. Both Scott and I have many years of experience in philanthropic planning for our clients. And we're hoping that this will help all of you to engage in these discussions, whether it be with your clients or if you are individual donors. Hopefully this engages some thought and discussion for you with the people that you value in your philanthropic planning. Scott, I'll turn the next
Oh,
slide to
great.
you.
Yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you all for being here. This is just a topic that's so important, and there's just so many misperceptions around the topic. Certainly, even the word estate planning sounds intimidating, and everyone thinks, oh, it's negative and it's important. I need to do it as a responsible adult. The reality is if you put thought into it, it can be very, very positive. And certainly even the word values can be kind of intimidating to some. And both as us and talking about it, I know in our advisor community as well, many of us, get a little nervous talking about it, but the reality is that our estate is the single largest transfer of wealth that we ever have control of in our lifetime. And it's really a shame that more people don't really give it its due and think in great detail about what it means. And that's what this presentation was really a start of. And we hope you find the tools and some tools in here to think of the conversation yourself. Because what we really hope for is that you have an estate plan that reflects your values or your client's values and the best intention and vision they have for their loved ones, their assets, and their legacy. It's going beyond what people traditionally think of estate planning. And values are so important. They inform our upbringing, our character, they guide our decisions and actions. They influence the choice of our friends and lifelong partners. They unite our families. They define the culture and corporations of places that we work. And they underline the mission of the nonprofit organizations we support. And they impact the reputation and how we will be remembered. And yet, so many of us just don't think of that in the context of our estate plan.
Yeah, Scott, I'll just add one of my favorite quotes comes from Lorraine Del Prado, who really helped found Leave10, and she describes an estate plan as a love letter. It's something that we should think about as, who are the people and the entities that we care about, and how do we want them to be taken care of when we no longer need our resources. So a lot of people think of estate planning as a stapled together legal document. You go and you get it notarized and it feels very official and very black and white. But really, this is about expressing your love for your community, your love for your family members and friends. So that's the way that I always encourage my clients to look at what an estate plan really translates to.
Well said. Do you want to get a little bit into this value of money? I'm sorry I didn't advance the slide.
Oh, you're fine. No worries. Here we go. Yeah. So the value of money, we wanted to start by just reorienting your perception of what the value of money means. If you come to think of it, money by itself really has no positive value. It's deriving its value from how it's deployed to accomplish the goals in your life, for your family and for your community. It is simply the means to attain your vision of an independent, happy, and meaningful life. Another quote I love from a friend of mine is that wealth is really an amplifier. Wealth really empowers you to do the things that you would otherwise do in your life. It empowers you to do even more good, or it can empower some of the bad behaviors that we see really impacting families. So when money becomes an end by itself, it can be an obstacle to well-being. There are many stories of people with inherited wealth who are plagued by feelings of guilt, insecurity, low self-esteem, by an inability to have functional relationships, by generations of substance abuse, and by endless sense of scarcity, feelings of isolation and distrust. So don't assume that the objective of estate plans is to maximize what kids can inherit. Sometimes the best place to start with values-based planning is to look at concerns about the possible negative impacts of excess wealth on children. Does the potential destructiveness of wealth concern your donor base or your clients or your family? How do you talk about excessive wealth's potential effects on those that are not concerned?
Well said. And this gets back to your point just a second ago, Jean, that a lot of, I mean, your estate plan can be intimidating, and there are so many things involved. But a lot of people don't think of, maybe think of it this way. It really, truly is the last message you have to your family, your loved ones. And should it be represented by all these kind of boring, not very exciting things? And that's what Jean talked about a little bit earlier. If you think through the values and think through the conversation today, we'll mention it a lot, but there are chances for you to really think about a letter to loved ones or a statement of purpose. Because these traditional methods of planning are they're really limiting, and tax mitigation, asset protection, I mean, they're all kind of boring things. And what's different really about values planning is just how it encourages people to communicate their goals and talk about why they did things. And I also think, no offense to our attorneys in the room, but a 30-page trust is not super exciting to read. But what is a tangible statement of someone's values is actually that gift. Because so many people think of, oh, I got this duty, I have to give it to my son and daughter. And it's just, they don't think about it. And come on, you live your whole life supporting the community and supporting causes. And if that's who you are and what you stood for, you could have volunteered years for education or the environment. And that gift, whatever size and whatever large, is a tangible statement of your values. So I don't want you to forget that.
Yeah, that's great, Scott. And I love those letters of intent in administering trusts over the last 25 years. Those letters are incredibly informative when decisions are trying to be made standing in the shoes of the person that created it. So no offense taken on behalf of other attorneys. I think there's a lot of legalese language that ends up in documents, and that list that you just showed, it is a great example of, really the business of, putting money to work on behalf of an estate or on behalf of a family. It's some necessary language, but those letters of intent can go a really long way of establishing the values of the person that is creating that document. Yeah. So that's a list that I've used before too, to show what, naming a loved one in your document, the responsibilities that they bear in carrying out an estate plan. So
I just wanted to interject just super quick that we have another session if we have another time to get into some of the questions. But one thing I like to think about, it's not about who gets the stuff, it's more about opportunities for your loved ones, and just changing that context really, I think, helps people put a little more thought into it. And that's what can be included in a letter, or why you did something. It's not, who gets the stuff, but really, I just want this opportunity.
Thanks, Scott. So just jumping in here, heirs don't develop critical skills needed before inheriting money necessarily. My dear friend Kevy Edwards Pitt wrote a book, Raised Healthy, Wealthy, and Wise, where she lists skills that she discovered from her study of successful heirs associated with preparedness for inheriting money. And she included things like knowing how to earn your own money and live contentedly off of the money that's been earned, knowing how to set and pursue vocational goals, giving every job their best shot, sticking through rough patches and learning skills and insights from each job experience, having a self-worth not dependent on a family's wealth or influence, and having an earned sense of resilience and ability to overcome setbacks. These seem like basic skills for us, but they need to be consciously presented in heirs if they're to be responsible in stewarding the wealth that they're inheriting.
Let's see, are we on? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there we go. Here's another author, Dennis Jaffe, is another nice resource, and this gets into the elements of how to have a real positive cross-generational family. It's a great source, and I think the key elements here is that the families that are successful have an engagement and a collaboration. It's that kind of middle point in there that's so central and key, and that basic trust and respect and cooperation. And it's kind of similar even to a business plan, if you look at it a little bit. But the key is I think, and I know generationally we're changing a little bit. I know my father was the silent generation, and a lot of people just wouldn't talk to the younger generation about what's going on. And I think the more you can engage the family of why you're doing things, the better. And I think this Jaffe and his research has proven that to be very sound.
Yeah, I've had the privilege of working with a 5th generation family and also a 7th generation family. And I would just add, and some of these families actually ended up in Dennis Jaffe's study. I would add that, you know, really the successful transition of wealth that I've seen in my experience with these successful families is that collaboration that Dennis talks about. It's coming together as a family and having fun, first of all, and making sure that the family is functioning first and foremost as a family, not as a family business, not as, you know, a succession of inherited wealth, but really engaging with each other and building genuine relationships. So fun is really important. There are always education components in official family gatherings that I've seen that have been really successful in bringing in that next generation and making sure that they have the tools to understand wealth that they're inheriting, making good, sound financial decisions, stewarding wealth. And I've also seen philanthropy as a huge component of these successful families, working with family foundations, donor advised funds, community foundations, engaging each generation in a collaboration around something that's beyond the wealth of the family and really giving back to the community. So Dennis did that great study, and I encourage you all to read his book. So values-based planning cycle. This is a great diagram from Timothy Belber's book, The Middle Way. And it presents an ideal cycle of values-based planning, also demonstrating how planning is driven by client values as opposed to tactics, and how professionals exercise their roles as counsel. The process involved in the upper 2 quadrants address the whys of planning. Starts with discovery, which involves asking questions. And I am flipping out of my notes here.
Oh, sure.
Here we go, which starts with asking questions relevant to who your clients are, their values, principles, goals, and their life purpose, where they and their families are right now and where they want their families to be, which would include conditions like self-reliance, entrepreneurship, humanitarian involvement, or opportunities like education, home ownership, business succession, and philanthropy, and what is the impact and the meaning that they desire for their wealth. So once a planner is armed with the values, outcomes, and behaviors the client wishes to achieve in their estate plan, then you can proceed to the hows of planning, the design phase where tools, strategies, and techniques are chosen to carry out a client's goals, and then the strategic implementation phase. And that involves the choice of advisors, the preparation and execution of documents, the use of financial products, the creation of entities, all of the things that Scott and I were listing out earlier. A year or more after implementation, we go back to checking the whys of planning through a relevance review to make sure that whatever adjustments are necessary due to new lessons or circumstances are made. What we also like about this planning model involving the largest transfer of wealth your clients will be doing is how similar the phases are to the strategic and business plans of companies and nonprofits. And that's why every step needs to be purposeful.
Well said. And I think it's important that these steps are made, because this next slide talks about the outputs, but unless you've had a really robust conversation about the why, and choosing the right advisors as well. This gets into the output for each phase of the planning. And you'll see right there, they're listed. You might decide that there does need to be a legacy letter, a statement of intent or vision, and perhaps a family meeting or a purpose-driven results that move into the, formalities of that actual design phase that has the legal entities, the trust and wills and things. So it's really important that all aspects are covered.
Thanks, Scott. So by beginning with the end in mind, values-based estate planning enables financial assets to be harnessed to support the desired outcomes that you or your clients have. These outcomes can include the propagation of the family's core values, the support of opportunities to launch heirs into self-reliant and productive lives, or to reinforce their responsibility and resiliency. Reinforcing family harmony and cross-generational engagement, or enabling the family to make a positive, enduring impact on the lives of others. Values-based planning helps your client or you feel deep satisfaction rather than anxiety about the legacy plan to leave and how you'll be remembered. It complements the messages, modeling, and training that's already been exposed to their children and grandchildren.
Well said, and I think it's another statement that this planning is very positive, and I think really liberating, because you know that your wishes are going to be carried out. So we're going to transition a little bit. We have a little survey that we wanted to share with you. A little bit, I think the advisors are critical in philanthropy as well, and it's said next really to the family that people do trust. That's who they're going to look to carry out and engage in these conversations. And so the next few slides is some research based on that. And I'll transfer it over to Jean here to get us introduced as well.
Okay, so this first slide is really looking at the philanthropic conversations from the wealth advisor's perspective. And I find these statistics really interesting. 65% of advisors who incorporate charitable planning advice in their practice says it's an important aspect of their client relationships. That seems low to me. 80% say it's a relationship builder. And I think, from my own experience, I think when you start to talk to clients about the things that they care about, you really build strong relationships with your clients and their families. It's a whole different way of engaging that isn't just about numbers and returns. It really is about helping them set their goals and meet those goals. 72% of advisors say it positions them as a broad financial expert. 61% say that it keeps assets under management. 56% say that it leads to multi-generational relationships. And 74% of advisors believe that discussing philanthropy is good for business development. 56% believe it helps build relationships with clients' extended family. So, I think that this is a case for engaging your clients in these discussions. It is just a much deeper way to get to know a family and what matters to them. It helps us to advise in a much stronger position to ensure that their estate plan is falling into place and supporting the ultimate goals of what they're trying to achieve. So just highly encourage you, if you're in an advisor seat, to ask questions of your clients about their philanthropy and their values, what they care about, and make sure that that is something that is incorporated in their plan, both from a financial planning perspective, as you're looking at their capacity to give, and also an estate planning perspective as you're looking at their documents to make sure that they follow the goals that client has.
That's great. So U.S. Trust and the Philanthropy Initiative, I think they're now switched over to Bank of America, but they've conducted a study and they do it regularly. These dates are a few years out of date, but the results are very similar. And what they did is they studied 300 advisors and 103 high net worth clients, and just, it was really enlightening to see just of how, bringing up this conversation and how it was perceived from an advisor perspective versus a client perspective. And you'll see there's some significant points where there's a disconnect.
Yeah, these are some fascinating statistics. So looking here at what advisors focus on and what the clients perceive, and that separation that Scott's mentioning, from the advisor's perspective, 38% of the time, they are focusing on technical topics, and 41% of the time on values and interests is what they think they focus on. Clients, on the other hand, say that 63% of the time, their advisors focusing on technical topics and only 32% on values and interests. So there's a disconnect here between what advisors believe they're talking to their clients about and what clients are receiving from their advisors. Again, the technical side, we are all technical experts when we're advising our clients, but the technical, the black and white stapled together estate planning document piece of paper sometimes gets in the way of, really understanding what our clients are truly after in their plan. It's the legal document versus that letter of intent and what you care about and love. And, just keeping in mind that is really the true goal of what we're trying to achieve for our clients, helping them carry out what they need during their lifetime and then carry out a legacy that's meaningful to them.
So the next question is again about tax benefits. And as you might expect, the advisor thinks that's what the driving force is. Well, it's not. It clearly isn't. And a lot of advisors do believe that it is still motivating for some, but it really is not. It's not the tax tail wagging the dog. And so really what it's about, it's really that legacy and responsibility and impact and purpose and leaving the world a better place and supporting organizations that they love. And that's really what's guiding it here. And so as advisors, it's important to bring it up. And as clients, you want advisors who aren't afraid to bring it up. But again, tax is clearly not the number one thing.
Yeah, and this slide, statistics, is looking at really what the advisors believe inhibits gifting versus clients. And if you look at the advisor side here, they tend to believe that the main drivers are related to budget. So believing that their clients wouldn't be left with enough money, or that they wouldn't be left with enough to leave to heirs that would be meaningful, or that the client doesn't believe that they have enough. From the client's perspective, however, it is more concerning around the organization itself, stewarding their funds or a lack of connection. So really, connecting the donor base, keeping them informed about how their charitable dollars are being used and stewarding them in a manner that's meaningful to them is a good lesson for the nonprofit community to learn from what these statistics are outlining.
I find this one fascinating. And I think it's a good case that a lot of people have a misperception about nonprofits. I've seen a lot of people who think, oh, they're nonprofit, they're just a small little food bank or a small, one person operation. I mean, we have large, very, very sophisticated and wonderful organizations that are charitable and nonprofit. And I think as advisors, it's good for them to get to know them better. And I think it's also important, for clients to get to know them better. And I think resources like our Seattle community foundations and community foundations, if people have a cause or an area, social justice or the environment, and maybe they don't know all of the nonprofits, which, it's going to change a lot over the next 10, 20 years, but having quality resources like a community foundation can be a great resource if that's an area that, the clients want to support. So I find that question fascinating. The next one is I find interesting too. It's where the advisors want to be more proficient. And I think you'll see that all of them do relate to today's topic, and that there are, opportunities to learn more. And I think it's, that's one of the reasons why we have Leave10, and we want to have more and more of these conversations, because the more people talk about this important conversation, the more people will act and make incredible gifts and have more happy and resilient families too.
So overall, this study really demonstrated a disconnect between the client and the advisor perceptions, and it highlighted opportunities to engage further in values-based conversations. Clients are asking us for these conversations, and they're looking to others to help them engage in what matters most to their legacy. Advisors need to engage clients in conversation about giving earlier and more frequently. Tax mitigation drives much of advisors' charitable planning, but it needs to really find that balance between the planning and the technical and what the client's goals are, and what their values are. So if advisors are wrongly attributing clients' refusal to give to a sense of financial scarcity rather than clients' perception of a charity's effectiveness, then we're not having, those meaningful communications with them that are going to drive things forward. Advisors can do more to help clients access information on a nonprofit's effectiveness and accountability, and assist them in getting connected with charitable organizations. And Scott and I later in this presentation will talk about the resources that you might engage along the way, the types of advisors to engage. But I would just strongly encourage the involvement of the nonprofit organizations in these discussions. They can help to make that meaningful connection between a donor and the legacy work that they're trying to accomplish. And they can also be a really strong partner in helping to make sure that the planning is done in an effective and meaningful way.
And I would echo that. And I would also add that I know a lot of people are worried, oh, if I talk to a nonprofit, I'll get solicited for another gift. All nonprofits can keep you anonymous. And the reality is especially with larger gifts, you're really doing a disservice to your goals, your values by not talking to them, because endowments, and there's so many wonderful ways to share your values and make a huge impact. And the planning, and we're not getting into the details today about all the charitable options, but there really are many ways to double and triple that gift to charity by minimizing taxes and still supporting your family as well. And so to, turn $1 million gift into a $3 million gift, when you think of what it could do, that gift you give, that annual gift, we have 1,000, 5,000, could go on forever to many charities if you put some thought behind it. So it's really inspiring and encouraging to see what's possible. This section, we do have, when we've presented this in the past, we have done it in person prior to COVID. But obviously with the time today, we don't want to overwhelm you. So we've designed today to be, to end here in a little bit, but we do have some questions. And they are on our website, and I know the team's going to share those with you, how you can find them. We have an advisor toolkit on Leave10 that does list these questions. You're welcome to explore on your own. We also hope maybe to have another session like this and maybe have it interactive as well, because some of the questions, that's why we have about 10, because some are relevant to you, some maybe not so much. But again, just wanted you to be aware of that. And we will provide a link to some of the ways that you, either as an advisor or as a family member, and how to talk to your family about these questions are there. So Jean, we got a few, go ahead.
Yeah, these are the questions that I tell my clients to take and have a glass of wine or a cup of tea with somebody that you want to have this discussion with. It might be your partner, your spouse, a friend, maybe your advisor or your nonprofit, but really start to dive into these and establish what you're hoping to accomplish, what your hopes and dreams are for what your legacy is. Questions like what is your vision of a happy, successful, and purposeful life? These are important discussions to have, especially before you enter into your estate planning work, so that you can come to the table with some clarity as you're meeting with your attorney to draft your stapled together black and white piece of paper document. But you can come to it with some clarity around what you care about, what your legacy is really hoping to be, and how you want to be remembered.
Yeah, it is, and I'm struck too. I've seen some people respond almost if not everyone responds to this question, but I mean, is there something you regret, or is there something you wish you would have accomplished? And sometimes that question has brought up what people really care about. And so it is, I encourage you to look it up. And I would love to, have another session like this, because thinking about things in a different way can be really profound. Jean, do you want to summarize this one, or you want me to, or?
Why don't you go ahead on this one, Scott?
Okay. So this is, it gives you an idea of what values-based planning can accomplish. And it really helps clients focus on the values and conditions associated with a happy and meaningful life. It identifies the true wealth of your family, individually and collectively, the human capital, the talents, capabilities, principles, and behavior that they wish to propagate. And it deploys financial assets to sustain and further develop the true wealth of the family. It clarifies the highest purpose of their wealth. It brings renewed attention to the struggles, journey, and lessons associated with wealth creation and stewardship. And it helps identify the critical skills needed by their heirs before inheriting money, and also helps prepare conditions for a successful wealth transition.
So this is just a slide again addressing who can be helpful as you're trying to carry out your values-based planning. And there are a number of different advisors that can help partner with you in these discussions. A lot of us look at these at your planning through different lenses. So your estate planning attorney is going to help you draft the legal documents. Your CPA will look at this through a tax lens. Are there tax savings that can be had by having a charitable component, for example, in your documents? Your investment wealth advisor will help you to structure the gift, to look at the types of assets that make sense in charitable giving, especially. Also looking at your financial plan, making sure that you have enough for your lifetime, and that your assets are structured in a way that are going to help you accomplish your lifetime goals, and then help you to leave a meaningful gift at the end of your life. Your insurance professional can come into play here. There are some really creative ways that life insurance can be an asset that is given to nonprofit organizations. You might have a term policy, for example, that you no longer need, that might be able to transition over to another type of policy with a charitable beneficiary. And then your nonprofit philanthropic consultants. Scott is a great resource, great example of how nonprofits have amazing resources in-house that can help to structure meaningful gifts that are going to relate to what the donor is trying to accomplish with that organization, how they want the impact to really affect the nonprofit. Also, Seattle Foundation has an incredible staff of professionals that have such meaningful conversations with their donor base and clients to help them establish their legacy. And so I highly encourage you to partner strongly with your community foundation, and also with the nonprofits that are meaningful to you.
Well said. And I think ideally, all of these people can help carry out a true values-based plan. The one thing I wanted to alert of is, and I think this is human nature, but a lot of people know, oh, I need a will, part of being a responsible adult. And now I have kids now, I need to have a will. But they don't spend much time on it. They know, well, my attorney's going to charge by the hour. It's going to be expensive, but I need to get it done. So and there might be one questionnaire on an intake form that just says charities or values. And it's just a shame that we don't spend more time. The two people on this slide, though, your wealth advisors and your nonprofit don't charge by the hour. So these are the people who can really help you to think in a bigger picture. And again, they're not going to provide legal advice, but they can provide education and inspiration so that when you are ready to go to your attorney, you're prepared. And your CPA, they have a ton of knowledge because they're talking to you every year. And hopefully, and that's one of the reasons Leave10's here too, we hope more people learn about the positive things from charitable planning. Anyway, great, wonderful slide. So we
Yeah,
have.
I would add on this slide too, Scott. My favorite meetings are client meetings where all of those professionals are in the room together. The discussions that we have are robust. We're all looking at our clients' goals from a different lens. It's magical, and it's not playing telephone trying to translate from one advisor to the next about what the client is trying to accomplish. They can be really, really powerful meetings when everybody is in the room and we're all planning, we're all hearing the same thing from our client about what they're trying to accomplish. So just something to think about, getting as many of those advisors in the room together as possible whenever you can.
Well said. Do you want to summarize this one, or you want me to, Jean, or highlight any particular?
So, I mean, planning is helping to. Well, why don't you take this one, Scott? I don't know
Okay,
if
sure.
I don't know if I have my bearings on this one.
I mean, we want to get to questions here in just a second, and I think everyone can read here. I think the one thing I wanted to highlight is that your family will understand, why the estate's structured in a certain fashion, and not be surprised by the, how things are distributed in the estate. Any kind of a potential controversial provision or, asymmetrical inheritance, they're better understood if you've gone through this process. And because again, it's not just, it has to just go all 100% to my family in 2 equal parts. Well, that's for 90+%, that's really not possible. And there are tax implications, and there are just a lot more details to think about before you jump in.
I would add to what you just said by saying engage your family in your estate planning as much as you possibly can. You don't want your kids to have surprises. You don't want family members to be surprised after you're no longer there to have these discussions with them. That's the worst possible outcome. Having discussions as you're planning, really, it helps to reinforce the values that you have for your kids. It helps to reinforce the values that you have around philanthropy. It's an amazing example to your family members about, what it means to be a steward of resources. So, looking again at those successful 5-7 generation families, philanthropy is a huge component of it, and setting expectations among family members for how wealth might impact them in the future really helps them to see the stewardship and also to be engaged in a way that can be meaningful for them. So I highly encourage that as you're planning, that you engage your family as much as possible. They might be some of the people that you sit down and have that glass of wine with and go through the questions that Scott and I will be sending out to you.
Well said. And that gets us to the end of this section. And I think Ingrid's going to help facilitate some questions while we still have time. We might have answered one of them about the importance of engaging your family, but happy to talk about any others.
Mm-hmm.
Jean and Scott, thank you so much. And so now we are opening it up to questions. We have about 10 minutes for questions. And so Scott and Jean, just to kind of go off of what we, just talked about, engaging your children and charities and, how important that is to have that conversation. I know that the two of you have helped so many families navigate these conversations. Let's just say, you're starting off, how would you do this? Maybe it's, telling us a story of, where this has been successful, or, what looks like success in having that conversation.
I'm going to let Jean answer that. The one comment I do want to make, because I've had the pleasure in previous jobs where I worked with the realized estates, and I have had family members who had a letter to a loved one or had a statement of purpose, and they just couldn't compliment me enough and just say how that helped the healing process, the grieving process, and just how profound that was. So something simple like that really is impactful. But I'll let Jean answer that.
Yeah, these are my favorite conversations to have. It is incredible to sit down with a family. I come with a pad of paper. I don't want to bring my expertise and my tax planning to a discussion that is really just about being, curious about what your clients care about. It helps us to be much stronger advisors to them when we understand what their goals are, what they're trying to accomplish, what drives them, how they've been engaged in their lifetime, in their communities, with their family, what they want for their family members. When I say a will or a trust document is a love letter, it really is, setting out the ways that you would like for your family to be provided for. It's thinking about the basic needs that you want to make sure they always have, or the lifestyle that you want for them to live. And that's different for every person. It's different for every family. We all have different standards and metrics, and we've all grown up under a unique roof and set of circumstances. So being curious and just sitting with your clients or sitting with your advisors and having those discussions about what really matters really just helps empower the planning discussion. That's when the tax documents and PowerPoint presentations can come out way later if they ever do, to really strategically structure the gift. But our clients' jobs in all of this, if it's a job at all, is to talk about what they care about. And as advisors, we can come alongside that and make sure that we are building the most efficient airplane out of where they'd like to go. We can do it with a tax lens on, with a legal lens on. We can figure out which assets are a good gift and how we're going to maximize all of the everything. But it's, it really is just sitting down, being curious, and having a discussion with people about what they love. It's fun.
Jean, thank you so much for that. I can tell that, you're passionate about this. So thank you for taking that question. And for the audience, if you have any, questions for Scott and Jean, please do use the Q&A box at the bottom. And Jean, wanted to touch on the love letter, which I think is just such a lovely way to call it, which is something I haven't heard before. And I really like that. And so I'm curious, do you or Scott or maybe Leave10, is there a sample of that that we can, include and kind of send on to our audience so they can kind of see what it looks like. I feel like, right, folks that, maybe never done a cover letter, I've never done a resume. It's kind of like, okay, well, what does, a love letter look like?
That's a good question, Scott. I don't know if we have any examples, and I do wonder if Lorraine has something she might be able to share, but I would say these are so unique to families, right? I mean, a love letter is a letter to your beneficiaries. It's a letter to your family members. It's a letter to your community. It can be, a letter to yourself. But it really is just a statement of what your hopes and dreams are for your assets. What do you want them to accomplish when you don't need these assets anymore for yourself? What are you hoping for? It's such a unique thing that, to share somebody else's, I think would almost, I don't know, maybe plant too much of a seed for people.
Well, there is a session that Lorraine has presented on love letters, and we certainly have. You're right. I mean, we don't have a specific one, but we have examples of how they're done. But you're right; it's very personable, and it can be the example of I had. A lot of people too. Maybe it's not just their direct heirs, but maybe their grandkids. I set this aside so you could have education. Education's important to me, and I wanted you to have that as an opportunity. And just even saying that, that statement of purpose. And I admire you in so many ways. I love you, and I really wanted you to have this nest egg so you could start a home. But again, it's just saying why you left a gift in a certain way. And again, it's not legal, so it's really up to the donor and how they do it. I also think in the context of endowments, and I always encourage donors to say why they're giving a gift, because, people don't always want their name necessarily on a building. I mean, we're in the Northwest, and but people do care how they're remembered, and it's inspiring to staff and of why they set up a gift. And those are the people who read it. And so there's ways to keep it anonymous, but I do think it's very powerful. That any chance you say why you made a gift is powerful. And I will look, I'm not sure it's in our nonprofit toolkit or advisor toolkit, but we can add things to the web on love letters as well.
Yeah, I think that would be a great idea. I encourage people to so as Scott said, this is not a legal document. This is literally a letter or a letter of intent but I encourage my clients to put it with their estate planning documents, because that's something for your loved ones to read. It's something for your community foundation, the philanthropic entities that you're supporting. It's something for them to read when that will is also being read. How that, going back to that slide that Scott showed earlier, like, what is the message you want your beneficiaries to receive? It's not like, here's who the executor is of my estate, and here's all the legal language. It is, here's how I care about you. And so to have that document accompany your estate planning documents can be very powerful and can give some real meaning and some heart to what can otherwise be a very difficult time for people. And a lot of questions can come up in their mind, the whys. I've seen a lot of clients also use these love letters to just establish their values, to say, here's something that our family has always valued. Our family's always valued education. I want to make sure that your education is always paid for. I want to be sure that you can attend a college without having restraints on the cost of that school, because education's been very important to our family and been very important to me in my life and my career. That's one example. So, just establishing values, have it accompany your documents, and just have it be, something that lives alongside those documents. In administering trusts, I've found those accompanying documents to be really helpful, because when I'm acting in a professional trustee capacity and I have language in a trust that says health, education, maintenance, support, that's how somebody is to be cared for, it can be really hard to interpret what that means for that family. But these additional documents can give a lot of insight into what the values of that family meant when they said health, education, maintenance, support.
Okay, great. Well, it's 12:55, 12:56, so it's time to wrap up. I want to start off by offering our sincere thanks to the speakers for taking time out of their busy schedules to share this information and ideas with everyone. I hope you found it valuable. Immediately following this webinar, you'll be prompted to take a quick survey. It'll pop right up. Fill it out, please, and let us know how we can design future events that you find beneficial. It will also enter you into a drawing to win a prize, so don't forget. Also, we'll be sending a follow-up email. We mentioned this before. It'll have a recording of today's event. It will have copies of the slides, and it will have a link to those value-based discussion questions that Jean and Scott mentioned. So look for that soon. Finally, please know that a charitable bequest is one of the most meaningful ways you can support nonprofits like the Seattle Foundation. And for those who decide to include Seattle Foundation in their estate plan, you will become members of our Changemaker Circle, which has really great benefits. So please let us know. And if you have additional questions that didn't get answered today, don't hesitate to reach out to Ingrid or myself and we'll follow up. Our contact information will be in that follow-up email. So that's it. Thank you all for coming today. Please take care and stay in touch.
Have a great day. Thanks.